We're now on page 36 of your working file, the subject of Weld, Trim and Intersect. Now this is a really handy tool to develop some skill with, and I'll show you a few things here, but over time you'll learn there are lots of ways to use this to help you create shapes that are kind of hard to draw by hand. The thing that we have to bear in mind is that we always have a target object and we always have source objects. So I've tried to depict that for you here. Now remember when we learnt about the subject of combine, the same principle applies here. The last selected object, or the object lowest in the stacking order, will be the target object in this particular case. Alright? And it also means the resulting object, of course, will take on the attributes of the last selected object or the object on the lowest in the stacking order. So, in this particular case, the pink ellipse is the target object and the two red circles are the source objects. But we'll work our way around this as we go. So let's begin. We're going to first of all look at the subject of Weld. What does Weld do? Well, as you can see, effectively what it does is it takes all of the objects and it makes them one object by really drawing a line around the outside of all of the selected objects. The object on the bottom layer, or I should say lowest in the stacking order, well, that will be the final object's attributes. Whenever you select multiple objects, all of these options become available up here on the property bar. So we've got Weld, Trim, Intersect, which is where we're going to focus, and the next three are kind of the same as the first three, just using a different terminology to help you to be able to think it through. Simplify, front minus back, back minus front, and then create boundary. Create boundary is very similar to welding. We're going to focus on the first three and create boundary. Well, here we go. We've selected all three objects. Let's simply click Weld, and the end result is exactly the same as what we see here. All of the objects have been made into one single object, taking on the attributes of the object lowest in the stacking order. Let's undo that, Control Z. What would happen if I select the first one, finger on Shift, and then select the last one? What's going to be different? I'll click Weld, same physical end result, however the attributes, the fill color and the outline color, were taken from the last selected object. Make sense? Let's do it one more time. We'll go the other way, finger on Shift, selecting that one last, and of course we have a red circle with a yellow outline. Let's move on to trimmed. Now trimming is interesting. I'm simply going to select all the objects here, remembering that our target object is the one lowest in the stacking order. Our source objects are on top. Let's click Trim and see what happens. Pull that away, and we can see how we've cut a perfect shape into our object. If I pop that there, and do the same thing, select all objects, trim, we can continue to cut away at our object. So effectively, what is it that's happening? Just quickly undo that. The source objects are basically acting like cookie cutters. So our source objects are cookie cutters cutting into our target object. Here's an interesting one for you. What if we reverse the scenario? What if we select the object on the lowest layer, Shift, page up, bring it to the top, and now we select everything and we click Trim. What do you think's going to happen? Probably not what you think. If I move that away, only one object was trimmed. Why is that? It's because the effect, I'll call it the cookie cutter now sitting on top, can only cut through one object at a time. Okay, it can't sort of define the other objects to cut through. But there is a solution. Let's undo that. If I select that object, finger on Shift, select the other object, and now group them together, or of course if they were combined, and now I do it, click Trim. There you go, I've cut away my objects. So hopefully you're beginning to see there are ways around different things, but of course you've got to think that through, don't you? So let's undo that and we'll go back to where we were. Okay, back down on the bottom layer. So that's trimming. Let's have a quick look at Intersect. The difference between Intersect is that Intersect is only interested in the point where objects cross each other. So if I were to continue that line through there, in fact I go Shift page So I'll create a duplicate, plus, shift page up for my duplicate, and I'll remove the fill because I want you to see the line. Where that line goes through there and the line of the source object is there, we're only interested in the result of intersecting lines. Okay, so it's only the result we're interested in. Let me just delete that. So if I select this object and I select the last object and then I choose intersect, I get a resulting object. And that's my resulting object there. The only thing to bear in mind, again, is if I pop that one out of the way and I select those two, the object on the lowest layer, its attributes are applied to the resulting object. The only other option that we have, of course, is to select that first, select the red one last, now click intersect, and of course, the last object selected, its attributes are used. Does that make sense? So intersecting, again, is a powerful way to create unique shapes. So for example, let's say I stretch that all the way across there, and I'll select both of those, E and C on my keyboard. Now I'll select intersect, and I have a resulting shape. You may find in time, as you really get used to doing this, you'll be able to create the shapes you want by using intersect or trim. In fact, let me show you a really good one. I use it all the time, and we're actually going to use it on our button down here as well. Let me delete that. Delete that. I do this all the time. It's so handy. Plus on my keyboard, create a duplicate, pull it down just a little. Now, that shape at the top there, that moon shape, it kind of can take a while to create it by hand. Now, if I increase the size of my one on top a little, so let's just do a trim. So now I've got a moon shape. See that? That's really handy. And you'll find that you'll do this with all sorts of things over time. So what I'd like for you to go ahead and do right now is to practice all three methods of weld, trim, and intersect. In fact, why don't you practice just creating that little moon shape also? Okay. And the last thing I want to show you is with this little lady here that we've been using in our previous lessons. She is a piece of clip art. If I click ungroup all, of course I can pull her apart, as you can see, just like that. Put it all back together again. We have to be in an ungrouped state, but we can weld. So we can take a piece of clip art, weld the piece of clip art together, and create a silhouette. That silhouette, of course, takes on the color of whatever the object was on the lowest, in the lowest of the stacking order. You can then paint her any color that you want, but the point is you've got a simple silhouette. Now that's the result of welding. So you can practice doing that as well. The one last thing that you might be interested in, if I go back to my object here, completely ungrouped, and I were to use create a boundary, it's almost the same as weld. The difference is I'm not going to lose my original object. So I have a silhouette, but I kept my original, and that's the advantage of using boundary. So you can practice doing that also. When you finish, come back and we'll look at a few more things that we've got here.